there, and welcome to another season of What You Need to Know, a Canadian Polycast. I'm Alison Fair, a consultant here at Blue Sky Strategy Group. And as always, I have the honor of being joined by my colleagues, Tim Barber, Neil Brody, and introducing for the first time, Mike Blanchfield. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks, Allison.
It's nice to have you join us here at Blue Sky, and Mike and I have known each other from the press gallery, and nice to have you here on Team Blue Sky.
Looking forward to it, Allison.
Okay, well, we will hopefully not have these guys pick on you at all. But I want to start off. We are having a return to the House of Commons on Tuesday. It was supposed to be Monday, but because of the Queen's passing, it has been moved a day. I mean, we also had the Conservatives elect a new leader, correct, Neil? Pierre Poilievre. And I want to know what you see as being the effect of this new leader in the House of Commons. How is that going to change anything that in the dynamic that we're going to see come Tuesday for question period? Tim, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think question period is going to be much watch TV in the sense that it won't be necessarily anchored to any level of truth or issues that actually matter to people. But no, look, Pierre Poilievre will light it up. I do think that the government will take him very seriously and should. And I think he is a formidable opponent who's got a coherence to his point of view. My personal opinion is there aren't enough votes on that end of the spectrum, but we can get into that later. But I do think it's going to be must-watch TV.
Okay. Is this just quickly, Tim, is this the partner or the opposition leader that we've been waiting for to see with Justin?
Well, I think Aaron O'Toole was formidable. I think Candice Bergen was formidable. I think that, Scheer was quite good. I obviously think, Prime Minister Harper was really strong. I would argue that Pierre Poilievre will become, the fourth in a long line of Conservative leaders to get defeated by a Liberal government, but that's my bias.
All right. Mike, what do you see being coming through in the House of Commons with Pierre in there?
Yeah, I think, there's going to be a lot of hype and a lot of anticipation about the fight that everyone is going to expect to happen. But I think there's going to have to be this pivot to some version of the high road at some point by both leaders. I mean, this isn't sustainable to just be, as eloquent as Poilievre is and as skilled as he is, and on the other side of the Liberal benches, same deal. And I heard an interesting perspective last night, actually, from the U.S. Ambassador David Cohen at an event, and he was asked, "How do you deal with this rising, force of populism? What's the response? And do you shut it down, whatever?" And he said, "Well, no, you don't shut down free speech in a democracy. Obviously, that's not possible in the House of Commons. But his point was that you counter it with facts, you counter it with your narrative, what you're doing, your positive spin. And yes, I mean, the Liberals and Justin Trudeau are not going to sit by and take it from Poilievre, but at some point they're going to have to pivot to what they're doing and why it's different. And they've got some strong players on their front bench. They've got Chrystia Freeland, who was very strong during the pandemic in terms of justifying why all this money is rolling out the door and why we're trying to help Canadians. And I mean, they better not say they've had our backs one more time, because I think Canadians are sick of hearing that. But they're going to have to reframe it. And Cohen in his speech last night referenced the Joe Biden speech in Pennsylvania a couple of weeks ago, where he really came on strong against the GOP on being an anti law enforcement party and on the wrong side. So there's what I'm hoping that the Poilievre effect creates is just everyone upping their game and getting beyond the fighting, which will obviously take place, but it's going to wear thin fast. And remember, if things hold up, it's going to be 3 years of this. It's going to wear thin very fast.
True. Neil, as our Conservative representative on this in this podcast, what do you see as being Poilievre's effect on the next sitting?
Well, to carry on from Mike's comment, it would be fantastic after 7 years if this Liberal government would begin fact-based government. That would be fantastic. But what will we see from Pierre? Listen, I think message discipline will be there. He is backed by a longstanding professional conservative staff, if I can say it like that. And that message will be affordability. Everybody in this country is feeling the squeeze, whether it's at the gas pumps, the grocery store, the heating bills. The government can't ignore that any longer, I don't think, once September 19th comes and Mr. Poilievre gets up as the leader of the opposition and asks Mr. Trudeau pointed questions. You know, Mr. Trudeau's answer to everything is more money, more government spending. I don't know that that's the answer, because that, to a certain effect, will continue to drive up prices. Other messages from the Poilievre government will be pro-immigration stance. He made last Saturday in his maiden speech. He made a point of explaining that his family, his broader family now, is a family of immigrants who have come to this Canada and worked hard and started families and began businesses, joined the Canadian Forces, and are building Canada. And a third message will probably be responsible resource development. His line again from the speech last week was fighting climate change with technology, not carbon taxes. And you know, when you're talking about affordability and you see that you know, a certain amount of the gas pump price or a certain amount of your home heating price is a tax that really is doing little to reduce our carbon footprint. I think Canadians are getting sick of that sort of liberal hypocrisy.
Okay. Before I go on to the next question, I just want to know, we haven't seen or heard anything about his cabinet. I'm assuming that will come shortly. Who do you see? Do you see Pierre taking finance? I know you and I briefly talked about this since
Well,
it's all about.
I'm super happy you referred to them as his cabinet, because shortly, hopefully shortly,
shadow
there is a
cabinet.
conservative government running Ottawa, and there will be a chance for Mr. Poilievre to populate his front
finance
bench with
for-
cabinet ministers. Listen, you know, I wouldn't put it. I don't think this will happen, but I wouldn't put it past Pierre to retain a leader of the opposition and critic for finance. That would allow him to stand up in the House of Commons and talk to arguably the only two liberal front benchers that matter, which is Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland. I challenge anybody who lives south of Wellington Street, outside of Ottawa, to name any other cabinet ministers who have done anything in this parliament.
Okay. So before we get ahead of ourselves and talk about, Pierre and a front bench and that, I want to stick to the sitting that we have coming up. Tim, what are you going to be looking for? What do you hope that the government will address in this sitting before we break for Christmas?
So a couple of things. One is obviously affordability and inflation, which in some ways is a global phenomenon. And you've had multiple governments kind of juicing the economy for the last 2.5 years. I think we kind of knew this would happen. The issue will be how quickly can you shape that future and kind of turn that down. In the States, I would argue they're having a lot harder time. Almost full economy. They're still printing money, but they seem to be addressing it. But that does have a knock-on effect to us. To me, though, the real opportunity for the Trudeau government, and by the way, being in government, you have so many levers to play with, right? And Neil will appreciate this, having worked in the Harper government. Incumbency matters. That said, I do think there's an opportunity and a need for the Trudeau government to, first of all, pivot more to the center, while retaining this agreement with the NDP, which I just want to remind our viewers, this government, what you see, could last for another 3 years. There is not another official election until the fall of 2025.
Right.
So there's that room to maneuver. Now, are you going to be able to mollify the NDP, keep them on board? That's an open question. My hope is that not only do you have a more coherent economic agenda and pathway, and you're actually recruiting some new people into the government. And I've got my favorites, but I do think you could see some moves on that front. I do, it's quite normal as we go into the 7th year of this government. There could be retirements and seats that open up. Much like Candice Bergen announced she wasn't running again, I think there'll be people that do that as well in the Liberal ranks. And I think you'll have some new I hate the term star candidates, but you could have some high profile people pulled in. I slightly disagree with Neil. I mean, I agree that, in the best of times, you'd have a hard time getting people to identify the prime minister, forget
Right.
the minister of finance. But look, I think Minister Champagne, Minister Ng, Minister
Anand.
Anand, Minister Wilkinson, they all do their own thing, but that's pretty typical. I mean, let's face it, in our system of government, most of the profile does go to the PM and to the Minister of Finance. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Last quick point on the shot at technology versus carbon pricing. Carbon pricing and using market principles to shape the market, is a conservative idea. So anyway, we'll see.
Let
I mean,
the market do it, not the government.
Just let me finish. In the last portfolio, I think in the last platform, the Conservatives talked about technology, and they got killed on it. So I just don't know what's going to work. That's all.
All
Over to
right.
you.
All right. Well, I'm going to go over to Mike. And Mike, are you going to be looking for when the House returns on Tuesday?
Well, obviously all of the above, but in particular, from my perspective, just a little bit of foreign policy stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
Pierre Poilievre says he's campaigning or he's applying to be the prime minister. Well, that's great. And he's got his domestic messaging locked up. He's got a lock on it. He's going to communicate it effectively. He's going to be intelligent. He's going to be entertaining. He's going to be forceful. But, part of the job he's applying for is to eventually become the international statesman that leads Canada on the world stage. So I think I want to see some signs of this. I mean, the two big issues are obviously the war in Ukraine, and Canada is working on an Indo-Pacific policy, which is basically a policy to do something in Asia about China with everybody else. That's
Right.
basically what it's dumbed down to. And part of it, and there's not, the Liberals moved into a little more hawkish territory on these 2 points, which kind of might eat the lunch of the Conservatives a little bit or give them less room to oppose. I don't know, but I mean, on the Indo-Pacific thing, I mean, there's a component in this policy that talks about deepening defense partnerships in the Asia Pacific. It's not just about economic and development and trade. It spells this out in Melanie Joly's mandate letter, defense partnerships. So that's interesting. And then when you look at Ukraine, I mean, depending on which list you're looking at, Canada is either fourth or fifth in military aid to Ukraine right now. Now, this is the country that has typically been the NATO spending laggard and everything else. I mean, suddenly, we're right up. We're only the United States, Britain, and one other country, Poland, is contributing more weapons to the cause. We may or may not be ahead of Germany, so that's significant, and it's going to continue. So, and of course, the other thing I'm watching is whether or not we see Chrystia Freeland actually at NATO and how long she's going to survive on this or stay on this team. I mean, Jens Stoltenberg was supposed to have left the post by now. His term has been extended. If Freeland is serious about this and it's actually happens, she's only got a couple months left at most on the Liberal benches, and if she leaves, that's going to blow a big hole in the government's front-facing team that's going to be taking
or create a big opportunity.
We'll see. We'll see. Neil, what are you going to be looking for briefly?
Well, Mike, next time I have to go before Mike, okay? Because Mike took my Indo-Pacific strategy and the future of Chrystia Freeland, which I thought were fantastic things to look forward to in this coming session of Parliament. Also on my list is the fiscal position of this country, and I don't just mean deficits at the federal level. The government seems to be content on shoveling more money out the door. I just saw this morning a new announcement for $250 million to most of it to the East Coast. They're one of the solid Liberal voting blocks to the East Coast for to help with home heating costs to offset the cost of heating out there. Putting money in people's pockets helps in the short term, but then they have more money to spend on other things, which drives up demand when there's not enough supply, and that ramps up inflation. And then you've got the Bank of Canada worrying about inflation and hiking interest rates. So we're in a bit of a game of leapfrog to see how high government spending can go and how high interest rates will then follow. And at some point that the music stops and everyone has to find a seat.
Yes.
And we'll see if that happens.
Got to get off that Ferris wheel.
We'll see if that happens between now and June. So it's fiscal stuff and how long the coalition can last for.
Okay. On that note, I want to quickly go around one word, no explanation. I just want one word. How do you going to describe the next sitting? I'll start with you, Tim.
You always start with me.
I know.
I'm gonna use two, but they're loud and newsy, right?
Okay.
Like newsworthy. If that, like, I think it's much watched TV, as I said.
No, his one word. No, I saw you go three there, Neil. It was one loud and another word newsy. So
Yeah, that's
okay.
fine.
So since you
That's
were
fine.
on that, Neil, I'm going to go to you. What is your word?
SummerSlam.
SummerSlam.
This is going to be
Explain.
the best. This is going to be the best, the most exciting parliament. It's going to be promoted by WWE.
WE.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what it's going to be like. To go back to Tim's first comment, this is going to be the first couple of weeks are going to be raucous.
All right. And Mike, I'm going to leave it on your one word for the next sitting.
Okay, my word is toothy.
Toothy.
So it's going to be, if this dental deal doesn't evaporate, well, we all know what that could lead to, and and the fangs that we'll be seeing bared, inevitably
Nice.
starting
Oh,
Tuesday.
I thought you
Lots of
said
teeth.
truthy.
Oh,
Toothy.
Yeah. Hey, but by the way, I mean, look, Allison, there's going to be a lot of performative nonsense, right? Which is just good TV.
Of course.
But does it make for better public policy or better outcomes or whatever? No. But and I think it'll start with the conservative benches, but the government will get into it as well, and the NDP are famous for it. So that's kind of my shtick for
all
what
right.
it's worth.
Well, we're going to be looking forward to it next week. Tim, Neil, and Mike, thank you very much. I really appreciate you joining us. And to you, the viewers, thank you. We look forward to having you join us next time. Thanks.
Have a good weekend, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Blue Sky Strategy Group is one of Canada's leading public affairs firms. For government relations, lobbying, and strategic communications advice across Canada, visit us at blueskystrategygroup.com. Blue Sky Strategy Group is a proud member of the Global Communications Alliance.